Ever wondered what goes on behind the scenes of your favorite mobile game? Buckle up because on this episode of Beyond Pixels, we're venturing into the world of Gameloft with an associate producer and project manager, Mr. Albert Guimera Montserrat. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Albert.
Thank you for having me.
Now let's dive straight in and hear about what first sparked Mr. Albert's passion for the gaming industry and his journey to becoming a key player at Gameloft.
Well, my journey into the industry is a little odd because while I had always enjoyed video games and they were a big passion for me growing up, I didn't start there. I started in film. Um, when I was 16, I joined a small production company as a production assistant, and I worked there throughout my time in film school. And after that, I worked on several shows for Netflix, Amazon Prime, and the like. But after a few years in the film and media industries, I decided that I wanted a career change. My film school offered me an administrative position managing the sound department, and I thought it was a good position to have while I would figure out what I wanted next in my life. And while in that position, I serendipitously discovered project management, sorry, while managing the remodeling of a sound studio, and decided that that's the route I wanted to pursue. And so I decided to start my master's in project management and growing my network in the gaming industry in Barcelona, which was booming at the time, because I thought that all of my skills from film would translate well into video games. And right after I started my master's, I landed an internship at Gameloft in the partnerships department, and then I've been there ever since, basically.
All right. So, in your previous role as junior partnerships project manager, you managed partnerships with top brands like Tag Heuer, Boss, Lenovo, Samsung, and many others. How did you approach managing these partnerships, especially in the realm of esports? Can you share some insights into your experiences leading teams in this dynamic environment?
Sure. Asphalt is in a bit of a unique position because we're constantly working with other brands. Our game features real life cars, so we're constantly in touch with manufacturers to see what's next for them. From partnerships, we envisioned Asphalt as a place where car manufacturers can bring their other partners into the world of gaming. So it was kind of a tri partnership, right? So ourselves, a car manufacturer, and then a third brand, right? Gaming is super powerful because as a player, you're not passively reacting to things like you are when you are watching an ad, but you're actively engaging with the brand and the product, which generates a more powerful bond. And that is especially true if you manage to integrate the brand in a way that is native to the gameplay experience, right? And then esports have amazing potential because they bring in an additional layer of the storytelling of the drama that comes from sports, right? And so gamers form a connection with their favorite teams and players. And then if you can integrate the brand in a way that's non invasive and feels natural to the gameplay experience, the bond that you create between players and brands and the game itself is much more powerful. So it makes sense that from a partnerships perspective, we were trying to use esports as one of our main pillars, right? An example, right? You mentioned Bose and Tag Heuer. So, for instance, in 2023, we had our Asphalt series with them too, and Porsche as partners. The competition used all Porsche cars, right? We redesigned our game's HUD to include Tag Heuer's watch, right? So you could see the Tag Heuer brand natively integrated into the game. And then we released a bunch of articles and videos detailing how sound was an important part of competitive gaming and esports. So that was our way of integrating all our partners, so Porsche, Tag Heuer, and Bose, into our game in a native way that felt rewarding to players, right? So we're not just shoving um, just marketing down their throat just for the sake of it, but we were actually trying to bring something to their gaming experience, right? And basically, if I could say just one thing to highlight, uh, the key thing for these projects, both with internal and external stakeholders, is to be able to generate buy-in, right? If you're able to get people excited about the project and you're able to communicate your vision effectively and communicate the value of what we're doing, things tend to fall into place by themselves, right? As a project manager, you're really not doing the work itself. You're just trying to put people in the position where they can do their best for the project. And partnerships are tend to be one-off things. So the key is to be able to generate buy-in both from partners and internally, so that you can have successful partnerships and build amazing experiences for players.
I see. So now, as an associate producer and project manager at Gameloft, you've overseen various mobile game projects. How do you ensure that projects stay on track in terms of timelines, budget, and quality? Can you walk us through your approach to project management in the gaming industry?
Sure. Well, um, I've worked on mainly two projects: Asphalt 9 Legends, and then the recently announced Asphalt Legends Unite. And while the two projects are basically brothers, they have quite a few differences, right? Asphalt 9 is now have 5.5 years old, and it's at a point in its life cycle where we're basically maintaining the game, right? We're creating new content, features, and events all the time, but it all has to fit within the context of a game that it has been around for 5 years, right? But Asphalt Legends Unite, on the other hand, is a completely new game, right? And while it is a new iteration on the Asphalt franchise, we have a lot more freedom because we are able to create a new context for the game and the experience of playing Asphalt, right? Without going into too much detail, for instance, Asphalt 9 allows us to be a lot more agile because there are less unknowns. We have been doing it for so long, and the team just runs like a well-oiled machine. But Asphalt Legends Unite has a lot more unknowns, right? For instance, we're going into PlayStation, we're going cross-platform. We've never done this before. So these are things that we are having to kind of tread a lot more carefully with. And so while the vision is very bold, there are a lot more unknowns, and so we have to trail more carefully, right? Asphalt 9 is running on a mix of like Scrum and Waterfall. Well, actually, no, Scrum or Kanban, sorry, for Asphalt 9, because we're in its live ops phase. This works because our teams, as I said before, they just have been doing this before for many years, and so they run like a well-oiled machine, and so we can gauge complexity and risk easier, more easily. On Asphalt Legends Unite, we are following more of a traditional waterfall rolling wave planning approach. So basically, stuff that's near in the future, we are meticulously planning, but things that are further in the future are not planned as intensively because we know that it's such a long term project that it's hard to have an accurate plan spanning the entire project, right? For an Asphalt 9, we release an update every 2 months. And so that really limits the complexity, and that kind of narrower scope allows us to be a little more agile. Whereas when you have a bigger scope of an entirely new game, we need to kind of plan in a more traditional manner. It does sound kind of counterintuitive because we've always been told that agile methodologies are great for uncertainty and stuff like that. But when you actually come to think, when you actually think about game development and all the different disciplines involved, because it's not just software, um,
Absolutely.
this kind of waterfall approach makes sense for the beginning stages of the project, at least. Then, when it comes to maintaining a high level of quality and respecting our players, because we don't want to deliver a substandard product, we basically play the game. At the team, most of us have not basically all of us, but are players, right? So we playing the game, and the more we play the game, the more we can refine it, right? There's no secret sauce here. We just have to play the game, and that's how you find bugs and issues. Maybe something that you thought would be very rewarding to play turns out to be not as nice when you actually are interacting with the game. So that's kind of our approach, right? We tend to just test, 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 play, 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 and that's how we try to stay on top of the quality of the project. And then For scope and budget, this is me trying to go through the traditional triple constraint. Um, it's an eternal dance, right? The more you increase the scope, the more it's going to cost, and the more you'll stretch your teams, which will probably end up affecting quality. So at Gameloft, we would rather have something that works well and that's polished. That's something that has more things that kind of don't really work together. As a matter of fact, we've often delayed features because we feel that upon testing, they're not ready for release, right? So this is actually one of the advantages of live service games like Asphalt, right? You can constantly add more and improve and refine the game, which is something that you couldn't do maybe like 20 years ago before the age of the internet and, updates and stuff like that, right? You had to ship a product and it had to be perfect from the get go. And if you found bugs or issues, or there was something that the players you wanted to improve based on player feedback, that wasn't something that you could really do. Whereas now we have the advantage of being able to iteratively add to the game and make it better.
Now, reflecting on your journey from your freelance work to your current role at Gameloft, how has your approach to managing projects in teams evolved over time? What lessons have you learned that have contributed to your growth as a professional in the gaming industry?
So, in big terms, it's the same. No, nothing changes. Project management, big or small, always has the same key pillars. But there are big differences or certain differences when you are freelancing and it's a small company and a small group of people and a small team, and when you're working at a huge company with big budgets, bigger partners, and just bigger teams in general. So when you're freelancing, you're able to basically do whatever you want. You're wearing all kinds of hats, and the team is tends to be much more agile. Things are more reactive. Things are happening quicker, and projects, at least in my experience, tend to be a little bit shorter. Right, so you can pull off a project in a couple of weeks or a month or something like that. Whereas when you're in a big company, there's a lot more red tape. There's a lot more bureaucracy that you have to go through. But at the same time, that has the benefit of bigger budgets, bigger teams, bigger resources. So you can pull off a lot more. But in general speaking terms, it's all for project management. It's always the same. You're always trying to give the tools to your team so they can perform at their best. You're trying to communicate the vision of the project and just trying to balance the needs of your teams and the project and the stakeholders and trying to manage that communication. And then at the end of the day, it doesn't change from freelancing to working in a bigger company. It's still the same in big terms, but there are certain differences. So I'd say that if I've had to take anything from that has carried over from one to the other, I'd say the importance of communication and the importance of transparency.
All right. Now, moving ahead, as someone with experience in managing art teams across different platforms, including mobile, console, and PC, how do you navigate the unique challenges and opportunities presented by each platform? Are there specific strategies you employ to ensure the successful deliveries of visuals tailored to each platform's requirement?
Yes, I mean at Gameloft we're very lucky. We have super talented teams, and it's a matter of understanding the strengths and weaknesses of each platform, and then playing to those in the best way we can, keeping in mind the overall ecosystem of the game. Right, so when a game is available on multiple platforms, like the case of Asphalt and now Asphalt Unite, it's important to keep all platforms in mind when you make decisions. For instance, a specific UI or pop up might look great on your laptop screen when you're reviewing it, but then it looks terrible on a mobile device because of screen sizes, different colors, etc., etc., etc. So again, it all comes down to testing the game in real life or as close as you can and then just experience. Experience is key because it's happened very often that more experienced team members than myself are able to foresee issues that I couldn't even see coming because they have dealt with similar things in the past. And testing, of course, is key because that's how you empirically can find out if something is working or not. For instance, you can have your UI mockups, and you can just put them on your laptop screen, look at them, see, okay, I feel like this would work well on PC. Then you can throw them up on a big TV, and you can react to those and see if the experience still works on the TV. And then you can test them on a phone screen and see if any adjustments need to be made. And you can do all this before you start coding. So you don't necessarily need to test the final product. You can test each step of the way. And I think that is one of the key things for us. We have a very well structured process where we try to test at every step of the way. And so we try to we slowly refine our visuals and the quality of the product step by step by step. And so when we get to the very end, when we have the end product implemented and it's basically in its final form ready to be shipped out, we have a pretty refined feature or experience that often has very little to do with what we originally planned. And again, that's because we test and test and test and iterate and iterate and iterate. And again, because there's very experienced people in the team that are able to foresee issues as we evolve.
Community engagement and feedback often play a significant role in shaping the direction of games. How does Gameloft gather and utilize feedback from players to improve its games and enhance player satisfaction?
Well, for these, our community management team is, and social media are key, basically. Our community management team is constantly in touch with the community, with players. And they are usually the first to let us know when we've done something right or when we've done something wrong. Our Discord community, for instance, is quite numerous. And while it is, we are aware that it is not a representative way to gather feedback, because people that are on Discord are usually very engaged players, very vocal, and not all our players are super engaged and vocal. We also have a lot of new players that we need to also take care of. It's a great source of information for us. Most of the team also likes to keep up with the community on their own time. So we often will go to Reddit, Discord, on videos from our YouTube creators. We'll read the comments. And so a lot of feedback from the community will organically make it into the teams via individual contributions, right? So we'll deliver a feature, and then a team member might say, hey, I saw this thread on Reddit that was mentioning how this car is particularly overpowered or underpowered, or how this aspect of gameplay is more or less rewarding. And then we'll see how to integrate that feedback into the game. So the good thing is we have updates every 2 months, and this allows us to listen to player feedback and basically deliver a more refined experience every 2 months, right? So we're able to constantly listen to players and constantly try to implement and act on community feedback. And again, we are very blessed that our team is very engaged with social media, and a lot of this feedback will organically make it into the teams through individual contributions from team members.
With the rapid advancement of technology, how do you see emerging tech such as AR, VR, cloud gaming, AI influencing game development at Gameloft in the near future?
I'm sure the rapid development of technology will impact how we make games. AI, for instance, is incredibly powerful. And while at Gameloft, we're still figuring out how to integrate it into our processes, we are doing so from an approach of how can we use this to do more instead of how can we use this to cut costs. So I think that's very representative of how Gameloft tackles innovation and new technologies in general. It's always how can we approach this to bring a better experience to players, rather than how can we leverage this new tool to cut costs or to somehow cheat our players in some manner, if that makes sense. Unfortunately, I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't really tell you how I think all these different things will impact the industry, but I can for sure tell you that they will have a big impact, and it's on how different game studios choose to approach these technologies that is going to define what role they end up playing, and it will be very different per studio. For instance, in our the case of Gameloft, I am really really happy to be at a studio that has this very healthy, I feel, approach towards these new tools. So it's always, again, it's how can we do more and how can we do better, instead of how can we use this to cut costs or reduce our headcount or somehow cheat our players in some twisted way, if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense. Now, lastly, Gameloft has been at the forefront of mobile gaming for many years. How do you anticipate the mobile gaming landscape evolving in the coming years? And what opportunities do you see for innovation within the industry?
I think that as phones become more capable, mobile gaming will become even more powerful. I think that mobile gaming has a very important role to play in the future because there's an entire generation of players that have grown up playing games on their phones first. I'm still part of the generation that played on console and PC first, but that's not the case as much for subsequent generations. So mobile gaming has also opened up the industry to a lot more people. You no longer need specialized hardware or high-end hardware in order to be able to enjoy games. Sometimes you don't even have to pay. Again, Asphalt is a free-to-play game, and in the case of hyper-casual games and mobile games in general, that is more ubiquitous, right? The free-to-play model is very ubiquitous in the mobile space. So I'm sure that the industry's paradigm will change, and it will do so relatively soon, especially once this newer generation of players that has grown up playing on phones first, get into decision making positions within the industry and can start to steer the industry in a way that feels organic to them as players. There's definitely a lot of room for experimenting and innovation. We're in tech. Technology is constantly evolving. Tools are more accessible than ever as well. So it's not even a question of resources anymore. You don't need to work at Gameloft or to work at a studio of the size of Gameloft to deliver incredible experiences to players. There's free tools that can enable basically anybody, any indie team or even solo developers to deliver incredible games to players. So it's all going to be about who's the smartest and who can captivate audiences better. And again, it's not resource limited. So there's tremendous potential for innovation. And I think that there will be a strong shift in paradigm in the industry as a whole, probably within the next, I'd say, maybe 10 or 15 years, as this up and coming generation of players, of mobile first players, gets into decision making positions and can start steering the industry in a way that feels natural to them as players.
All right. So that wraps up our entire podcast for today. Thank you so much, Mr. Albert Guimera Montserrat, for joining us on Beyond Pixels today. It's been incredibly insightful to hear about your experiences and expertise in project management within the gaming industry. We wish you continued success in your endeavors at Gameloft and beyond.
Thank you very much.